joined by Aditi Dash from Circle Up. Do you guys want to say hello to everybody?
Hi.
So really excited about this conversation. The main thing that we wanted to do today was just check in with Anna. She did so well at our pitch competition a couple weeks ago. And I think this is one of the products that people are just really curious about because it's so differentiated from what's out there. It was one of the highest scoring products in pitch on a couple dimensions, especially just overall flavor and how much people thought it was just delicious, basically, and purchase intent. And so for me, I mean, it says great things about the brand and the product. So I think I have a lot of things that I want to ask you about, but Anna, do you mind just kind of telling everybody, just to kick things off, a little bit about like what is Chia Smash? Like, how did you get started with this thing?
Yeah, definitely. So Chia Smash is our good for you jam. We're calling it Jam 2.0, where deliciousness meets nutritiousness. And kind of the backstory around it is that I'm kind of a big health nut, have always been very conscious about, what I'm eating. And in particular, over the years, like sugar has become like the big evil in diet, and everyone's really conscious around their sugar consumption. And I also kind of come from the food world. I've been working in food for around 3-ish years now, and I've seen all these amazing innovations happening from like chickpea pastas. I mean, so many healthy nut butters and low sugar ketchups and sugar-free candies. But it's interesting, you walk over to the jam aisle and it's a lot of the same brands that have been there for like 20, 30 years. You've got the Bon Moments, the Smuckers of the world. And, they've been like favorites across generations. And when you turn over the label, they're in fact filled with sugar. And I know you guys know there's this crazy regulation around the like statement of identity for jam, in that for a jam to be called a jam, it has to contain at least 55% sugar by weight. So a few spoonfuls and you've had like, half your sugar content for the day. So really, wanted to bring Chia Smash, which was something that I just made for myself, have on top of like my oatmeal in the morning or with some yogurt, and really bring it to the world and kind of shake up this category that, is a staple in the American household. Like the PB&J is like a classic sandwich or like toast, but, there's been so much kind of like evolution on the nut butter side, but jelly has just been left behind. So I think it's time that it like had its moment. I think there's a lot of untapped potential in the category.
Yeah, go ahead, Aditi.
I was going to say, Anna, do people still eat jam and jelly?
Yeah, they do. A lot of people do, because a lot of people don't know that actually it's filled with sugar. It's a pretty kind of steady market. It's not one of these great ones that has seen crazy growth over the years. But I mean, like the kind of household penetration across the US, I think it's like nearly 300 million Americans that are eating jam, which is a really significant portion of the population. But I think, we just take it for granted that it's just, it feels a little bit healthy, it's fruits. So I think we haven't just really kind of dig behind that and seen actually what's in it.
Yeah, so you mentioned the sugar content before, and honestly, when I learned about Chia Smash and had it for the first time, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole trying to understand what's actually going on. So for somebody who didn't know about it, it blew my mind when I was looking at the sugar content in some of those jams that you mentioned that are my childhood favorites. Grew up eating that stuff, but yeah, you turn over the back of the jam or the jelly, whatever you're eating, and then it just doesn't have nutritional information. And then when you Google it, you basically learn having that jam is like having pie. Like if you have like jam on your toast in the morning, you're just having some pie, which, if you're like somebody who I think has a better diet than I do, is maybe okay for some people, but for, like I should not be starting my day out with just a little bit of pie. And so when I checked out Chia Smash, I think there were a couple things that I noticed about it. And, firstly, for me, it was just that there's so few ingredients in this. So, I mean, it basically just says strawberries, chia seeds. I don't know if you guys can see this, dates and lemons. It just has a little picture there of each of the 4 ingredients. How did you manage to make this with such a clean label or just so few ingredients? How hard was that to do? Did you know that would be possible? How many different iterations did you have to go through to get it?
There were a lot, and it was definitely a really steep kind of learning curve. Like jams today, like a standard jam is kind of sugar, fruit, pectin, and preservatives. And I really not only wanted to tackle like the sugar angle, but also the preservatives and just the additives that I didn't think were like bringing anything to like the nutritional value of the product. So, it's one thing to create a product at home in a very small batch that lives in your fridge and you eat within a few days, to actually creating like a shelf-stable product that sits in a grocery store, has to travel across the country. So there was a lot of iterations, a lot of Googling, a lot of kind of learning about the kind of stuff like food science, really. And I ended up partnering with a food scientist to kind of get it from, a product that sits in the fridge to actually one that can be shelf stable and sit in your pantry until you're ready to eat it, which is, kind of as you think about like supply chain and logistics and distribution, having a shelf stable product is very much advantageous. But it probably took about 6 months of like solid recipe testing, partnering with the food scientist, going through all the certifications to get to like a final product that could sit on a shelf and, still have that kind of integrity that I wanted in it. Every ingredient is very purposeful. Like chia seeds, they kind of replace the sugar and the pectin in a traditional jam because they bind it, and gives it a little bit of the preservatives instead of like a traditional kind of artificial preservative. And then date syrup I chose as the sweetener because, when it comes to sweeteners, dates are actually super nutritious. They're filled with a ton of antioxidants and vitamins and minerals. And I think they kind of complement the fruit really well. So everything came together really nicely, but it definitely did not look like that on day one.
When did you first start working on this? Like, give me the date.
Yeah, I actually remember it. I like went out to dinner and I was like, I'm going to do this. And I told it to someone to like kind of make myself accountable. And it must have, I think it was right at the end of 2018, the end of the year. So it must be around 2 years ago now. And then I didn't launch the product until the summer of 2019.
Yeah. So it was like a pretty long developmental cycle, which I think which makes sense for something that's truly differentiated.
Yeah, definitely took a lot longer than I had planned.
Yeah, I mean, it always does. I think that anyone who starts something should make it a point to budget in 3 times as long as you think it's going to take, because everything takes way, way longer.
Yeah, definitely does. And there are lots of hurdles along the way that you don't know about until you kind of have to take one step and then you learn a little bit more and you take another step.
Well, tell us about a time where, tell us about a hurdle that came up unexpectedly and you were just thinking, holy shit, what am I going to do?
Gosh, there have definitely been many. I think one of the biggest like early hurdles was putting chia seeds in a product that is, so jams are acidic and then chia seeds are not acidic. So really understanding the food science behind that as someone without, a food science background, it just felt like this enormous hurdle. And there were a lot of things that I kind of couldn't wrap my head around. And I went down so many different rabbit holes. And it felt like, I definitely wanted to give up multiple times. I think in the end, like a lesson learned looking back, like partner with the right people early on. If you don't know something, like find someone that does and work with them rather than try and spin your wheels. and spend way too long doing something that you're not the expert in. But I think that was a really big hurdle, because there was nothing out there on the market. So I didn't, know that it could like be done. So it's kind of like this big unknown.
Yeah. Well, what kept you going on those nights? Like, you could have given up, but you didn't.
Yeah. I guess I've believed in the product since day one. I mean, it was something that I was personally using, and I think I'm someone that really likes a challenge. So I felt, just because it hasn't been done, it doesn't mean it can't be done. And once I found the food scientists that I partnered with, they gave me a lot of confidence as well. So it was just, kind of finding the right people, and then also hearing like other founders networks too. Like, you often see just the really glamorous side, but there's a lot of kind of backstories behind all the glamour that starts, which actually isn't glamorous at all. And these are just like normal hurdles that everyone goes through, and it's kind of part of the process.
So I'm wondering, you were talking about kind of the time to develop this thing. And, for me, I'm like, this thing needs to be everywhere. Everybody needs to stop eating jelly and start eating something healthier. What's the plan to get it there? What kind of progress were you able to make this year, and how are we going to get this everywhere?
Yeah. So when we launched in 2019, it was very much trying to get something like a minimum viable product together quite quickly to just test it out before investing a lot of money into it. So it was we're based in Brooklyn, New York, and we very much tapped into our kind of local area, kind of getting into local stores, doing a lot of demos, understanding kind of like the lay of the land in retail. And then the plan was, we got to the end of 2019, we signed on with Whole Foods, which was like a really big win. And we're like, right, like 2020, like we're going to go for it. This is it. And then when COVID hit, that was definitely like a challenging time for our business. So a lot of the things that we had planned for this year were kind of put on hold for a bit. We were predominantly in a lot of the smaller kind of like independent grocery stores, and those were ones that were really hit hard. So it was kind of a pause stage in our business. And then just, I think, kind of like September-ish, we've started to like kick back into gear and get things going again. And some of the big hurdles that we kind of accomplished, we moved our production to a co-packer, so really focusing on making sure that we have operations that scale. So it's no longer myself in a commercial kitchen making the Chia Smash myself, which is a big win, not just from, a time and money perspective, but frankly, like making a product in a facility that has the right equipment is far more efficient and yields a far better product than me trying to spend hours in a commercial kitchen trying to scale batches. So that was a really big win for us. We also are just wrapping up some rebranding and label design work. It's been kind of a big learning point for us since kind of launching. The product has a different name, Chia Smash. It's not automatically intuitive. There is this educational component. So really, on the one hand, working to bridge that gap through our packaging, but also create something that's really bold and fun on the shelf. When you look at the shelf today, there's a lot of the same look. There's this kind of more traditional brand. It's very like fruit focused. There isn't a lot of fun. There isn't a lot of play. So we're really working to bring that into the category as well, and really create more like a brand. So I think that we're really excited about what that will bring to us coming in January. So very, very soon.
And just speaking of the packaging and the naming, can you tell us a little bit about who Oswald is?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Australia, in Sydney, and I grew up on Oswald Street. And the reason we called it Oswald was we really wanted to kind of tie back to my Australian roots, bring in that kind of approachable, easygoing lifestyle. And it's not something we really push forward with the brand. I think it's like a natural element of the personality that we want to be, fun, approachable, easygoing. But yeah, that's where it comes from. And then the name Chia Smash is because originally we wanted to call it chia jam, but because of the regulation, we couldn't. So the
You can't even use the word jam?
No.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that was another hurdle that we had to come through, thinking of another name. And the Chia Smash is kind of a little bit of a smashing the jam conventions and the smashing of chia seeds and berries. So that's where that comes from.
Cool. So what do you think is the biggest challenge that you get from buyers, or that you're expecting to get from buyers, as you try to get this thing everywhere? For me, it's a no-brainer, but I'm sure they're just kind of a typical set of questions that are coming from them.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we've learned is that, jelly isn't this like super exciting category. Like, not many people, like, while it's a staple in American households and there are like tons of people eating it, like, no one's like, ooh, I'm going to pick up, my favorite jelly. Like, there isn't a lot of excitement over it. And it's kind of just this everyday, or like, it's not this exciting purchase, and it's not one that you make every week. So to grocery buyers, it's kind of just like this steady category that kind of plods along.
Mm-hmm.
And there are products that sell well, the Bon Mamans, the Smuckers of the world, the Sandel 4, all of these products that have been, around for generations, that have a lot of brand loyalty. Like, in a sense, the category is doing fine. So kind of getting buyers excited about the potential and kind of showing the strategy that we have, and kind of comparing it to these other categories that have also been a little bit slower and not as exciting. I mean, just thinking about, condiments with Sir Kensington's, like, no one was really excited about ketchup and mayo, yet they completely turned that category upside down. So I think it's kind of getting buyers on board with kind of our plan and the vision, and not just trying to be another jelly that sits on the shelf and looks and feels and does the same things that they already have and that already sells pretty decently.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Sir Kensington's example is really interesting, because I remember when they first started out, they were in every fancy New York restaurant. And I bet that was a part of your strategy until COVID happened. So, I think that, like, I'd love to hear about how you're thinking about that. Like, what do you do when a big part of your strategy just goes away?
Yeah, definitely was. So we've, since kind of this past year, we sell online direct to consumer, but it wasn't like a channel that we kind of placed a lot of focus or significance on. We were kind of focused on our wholesale business, but it really showed us the importance of having that kind of omni-channel strategy. And while, I think the world of food service, at least for the next kind of 6 months, is a little uncertain, I think that will come back as an opportunity, and with that, things like travel with airlines and hotels. But in the meantime, we're kind of broadening our focus from just wholesale to also online. And this, one of the challenges with with shipping our product online is, it's glass and it's heavy. So one of the things we've actually been exploring this past holiday season, we did a collaboration with another brand, and we put Chia Smash in a pouch, which is really light and really easy to ship. And it actually went really well. So I think there are kind of other ways to kind of tackle the D2C that solve some of the challenges and allow it to be kind of a really kind of important for us as well.
And can you talk a little bit about this dilemma that you probably had? You're going from glass, which is sustainable, and it's like holds the product to its best form, over to a pouch, which is some people would argue is better than plastic, and some people argue that it's not. But how do you think about making those trade-offs, and what goes through your mind, and what justifies any decision that leads to a packaging change?
Yeah. I'll say I don't know if there's like a world where we'd ever replace the glass jar. I think that really, while we are a different product in the jelly category, that really kind of holds us to like consumers understanding what we are. But I think, you know, some of the trade-offs, I think pouch technology and kind of materials are developing. I think in the past year, I've seen pouches blow up across a few different categories.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, the technology and the materials behind it and the environmental kind of like conscious aspect is improving. I mean, definitely still plastic. Oh, someone said you can do 100% recyclable pouch. So yeah, I think that there are ways to do them. So I think it's kind of weighing it up and picking the right kind of product for it. Maybe it's just kind of a single serve pouch and it serves a different use case than a jar in your fridge. So it's kind of catering the packaging to the right kind of target customer and use case, and having a world, and that maybe mean there's a world with a few.
It's funny. I don't know if this is in your someday plans, but I was just, when you said pouch, I don't know why I just started thinking about those Justin's peanut butter, the little like sachets that they give you. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't think there is some kind of a jam that I would want that goes with that also, but just kind of funny to think about. So one question that I have for you is around the pricing. So where are you now? Where do you see the pricing going? How do you think it will, impact your ability to sell in with buyers and ultimately get picked up off the shelf by consumers?
Yeah, great question. We're definitely a more premium priced product. When I look at the category, there's, it really ranges from like $2 up to like $15-ish. So we're at the high end or the top end of, more of these everyday jams, which is what we're trying to be. And then kind of, middle of the road of these like premium artisanal sets. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we are a super clean product with all natural ingredients. And we're never going to get to, the Smucker's $2.99 or even the Bon Maman huge jar for like $3.99. It just, when you're not filling your product with sugar and you're instead filling it with fruit, it's just like impossible to do.
I just pulled up. So on Instacart, this is how I always check pricing. I just pick a location and start looking through the pricing. But I think you're right on. Like it's a challenge, right? I mean, when you can get something so cheap, like this 30 ounce of Welch's for $4.59, or even the Bon Maman for $6.39 at the 13 ounce, would be one of the higher end ones. And there isn't just so much that's really widely distributed. That's at too much of a higher price point. You do see the fig spread at $8.09 for an 8.5 ounce. So that's a little bit closer. Well, that's basically pretty close to where you are, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. Pretty, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, like a product is never going to be for everyone. We're going to be for the people that care about the nutritional profile, or they care about what the brand stands for, and it fits into their lifestyle. And I think people are willing to pay when there is that alignment. But we definitely recognize that, we can't get to those super, super low price points, and we can't reach absolutely everyone. But I mean, you can't please everyone, and it's also important to create like a business that is sustainable. So I think it's a balancing act, and we're always looking at our COGS and very conscious of, as we grow, how they change and what we can kind of pass on as savings to the consumer. And even since we launched, we've brought our wholesale price down as we've gained efficiencies from how we made it at the start versus how we make it now. So I think there is definitely a path to continuing to bring it down, but pretending that we're gonna sit on the shelf and be comparable to the bottom of the barrel is not going to happen.
So Just one more question on that front. It just kind of it occurs to me. So it's a more expensive product, which might not be as big of an issue if it's appealing to people who maybe aren't as heavy users of jam or jelly, right? Because then it doesn't mean as much to them if basically if they're paying $8 for something like this, if it's going to last them a long time. Whereas if it's a family and they are feeding a lot of kids in the morning, like, okay, maybe that's going to hit their wallet a little bit harder. Do you have a sense for, like, hey, the people who are really going to start choosing this, who are they exactly? Are they the kind of people who are just like feeding their families? Like, how do you envision your target consumer? Where do they live? Any profile of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of, like male, female, family, like age demographics, that's not how we really look at it. Obviously, with a premium priced product, you're targeting a more affluent consumer. And the way we think about it is kind of we have this like internal term, like casual cognoscenti, and we think about it, it's kind of the 80-20 person, the person that is wanting to make healthy choices. They'll pick up the Banza pasta instead of the, wheat pasta. And they'll make these small choices that align with what's important to them. But they're also, going to skip the gym some days and eat some fries. And it's a balance. And it's finding that kind of consumer that kind of taps into the values that are kind of low sugar product that also contains, protein and fiber and omega-3s, and finding that alignment there. But I think the super, super health conscious, it's a no-brainer for, because there's like no other good options on the shelf. But it's tapping into the people that care but don't crazy care, and kind of aligning with what ticks for them, and having Chia Smash be that purchase that they make instead of a regular jam.
Yeah, I think we're on the cusp of a revolution in jam, because every other category that's a high sugar category is actually declining, but jam is flat / slightly growing at the rate that other products are growing at. And so I don't like, it's really bizarre to me that jam is not declining. I remember when I first started seeing better for you juices come out, the juice category was going down because nobody wanted to be drinking those juices. Candy, like, people aren't eating. So why, like, can you help me get into the mind of the consumer? Why are they still eating this high sugar jam?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think about it too, and it goes back to me. It's like such this like household staple in the American culture, and like the PB&J sandwich that you put in your kid's lunchbox. I think it's become such a routine for a jelly, such a routine. And, I don't think, we spoke about it a little bit at the beginning, I don't think people are really that aware of the sugar content for it. So that kind of routine hasn't been broken.
I think that's true. It's a good question. I mean, if I were just taking a stab at it, I would think it might have something to do with just the increase in snacking overall, which is a trend you would see for kids as well. Like, what's a super easy snack to make for kids? I know my mom used to pack me a PB&J for the car ride home from school. But we didn't know as much about nutrition then. So
that's so cute. It's so cute that you ate in the car instead of just waiting till you got home.
Yeah, now it seems a little odd in retrospect, but yeah, I don't know. I was hungry. Yeah, the other thing I kind of wonder, I think it goes along with what you said about maybe just the education not being there on jelly because it's not on the label. We don't know that you can have like all of your sugar from, just some jelly in the morning. But, I wonder if also it's related to maybe people trading up in some categories and trading down in others. So maybe, buying that more premium, juice or something, but then it's just these products in peanut butter and in jelly, they're so cheap that you can really just get a lot of value from some of these big jars. So, it doesn't totally surprise me that it's not declining in that kind of environment, but also, I mean, you know, in COVID, if you're making lunch or for your kids in a pretty quick way, that's not the worst option, just to spread price and, you know, voila, lunch is served. Yeah. So, Aditi, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had kind of a like very hypothetical question, if you're open to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so would you like, if you had to choose between these two kind of crazy scenarios, would you rather put like sugar in your product and be distributed in every store across the US, or like stick to the product as is, high price point, and selling in like you know, in the Brooklyn stores, people love you there, but it's a small business, good business, but a small business?
Yes. Would you sell out? That's the question.
I mean, you know, at the end of the day, if you're putting sugar in your product and you're having that mass distribution, you're not really doing anything different.
Yeah.
And you're not changing anything. You're not changing people's habits. You're not educating people in any way. It's another of the same already on the shelf. So I'd like to say that I'd choose the latter. But we actually did face like a little, not exactly the same situation, but when we moved from, as we were looking for a co-packer, you know, right now, or like prior, my co-founder and I had made everything ourselves. So, you know, us in a kitchen, you don't necessarily account for the labor because it's your own labor. And as you start to think about co-packing, there are all these additional costs that you haven't really baked in or thought about up until now, like transportation and warehousing and labor. And it definitely was a real kind of challenge to find a partner that we could work with now and grow with, and maintain a price point on the shelf that made sense. We really kind of see $10 as like this threshold. If you kind of go below 10, you lose people. So it's really important to stay below that. But there was a point in time where we were kind of investigating, like, how do we make this work at that price point? Like, do we need to change the ingredient profile of our product? Are there kind of things that we can add that aren't sugar, but that kind of create a like lower cost product? But at the end of the day, it's the integrity of the product is why, you know, we're doing this, and we found a way to make it work with our original ingredient profile. But it was definitely kind of a decision we grappled for a while. Like, do we add pectin? Do we add water? Do we add fruit juice? All these ingredients that are kind of cheaper and can bulk up a product. But at the end of the day, they're not creating, you know, the product that is as good as what we have now.
Got it. Super interesting. So, you know, I'm wondering, we've got people watching out there who are like, you know, mostly industry people. Some of them are service providers. Some of them are just really interested in kind of the journey of brands. But, you know, I think people would be interested to hear, what are just, you know, if there are like 3 things this year that you could snap your fingers and solve, what are those things? Is it like, is there expertise out there that, you know, you really need? Is it just a, you know, question of getting connections with certain buyers? Like, you know, what are those things out there? Because you don't know who's listening, and maybe they can help you with that.
I mean, sales and buyers and tapping into that network is, I mean, always very helpful. You know, while I come from within the food world, it's a kind of different angle, and retail is a whole new ball game for both my co-founder and I. So we're building these kind of relationships and connections from, you know, cold outreach. So warm kind of intros are always helpful, and kind of connections in that area, because ultimately, you know, we do want to grow through these larger grocery store networks. You know, we can get Chia Smash in the hands of more people in that way than kind of just small local stores, which are also extremely important. So I think that's, you know, always trying to find the right person, get into, you know, their inbox or whatever it is always super helpful. I think another one, you know, we're both my co-founder and I, so I have a kind of product innovation strategy background, and he is very operations focused, food manufacturing, supply chain logistics. But, you know, D2C and marketing, online like growth marketing is all very new to us. So, you know, anyone who has expertise there is always very helpful, especially as we try to, you know, place a little bit more importance and grow that that online channel. But yeah, I mean, you know, I don't think there's ever been anyone that I've met in this kind of journey that hasn't been helpful in any way whatsoever. You know, I think the things that, always the things that catch you out are the things that you don't know. So it's having people come and tell you something that you hadn't even thought of.
And you don't know the things you don't know, the unknown unknowns.
Yeah, those are the scary ones.
Well, last question for me. I don't know why this occurred to me, but I'm just kind of curious. What is it like starting a business like this out of New York? I see on here it says made in Brooklyn. I think you're based in Brooklyn or in the city. What's it like there? What's the community like? How easy is it to find partners in the ecosystem, and, you know, people who are just interested in kind of helping you along the way or providing connections?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's been so amazing. I think so lucky to have started the business here. I think, you know, on the one hand, there are a lot of founders, whether it's in food and beverage or something else. I think there's always so much to learn from people who are on a similar journey. But on the other hand, there's this like massive network of kind of smaller independent grocery stores, and that is like the best way to like ease yourself into the world of retail and grocery and kind of learn the lay of the land and build relationships with buyers. You know, it's very much more of a kind of safe space to trial your product. And I mean, a lot of the buyers that we work with, I have such great relationships with. They've been like the cheerleaders of Chia Smash since day one. And I just, you know, I don't think you really get that from the big players in the world. So being able to kind of start and have that supportive network as we've kind of grown the business and iterated has been amazing.
Super interesting to hear. I think, you know, especially, I think a lot of CPG companies find New York an especially difficult market to crack from a distribution perspective. Like, you know, you have to hire these specialty brokers who have the lockdown on getting that distribution inside the city. And so it's pretty interesting to think about it from that perspective of like, well, actually founding a CPG business inside of the city, you have pretty good access to all of those retailers that are really high value. So that could be a pretty cool advantage that I just hadn't thought about that way. Yeah. Cool. Well, those are pretty much all the questions I have. Aditi, anything you think that we didn't cover?
No, I don't think so. I have one last fun question. You have to tell us, what was your after-school snack when you were growing up?
Oh gosh, I ate like a lot of interesting. I was an athlete growing up. I was a springboard and platform diver, kind of crazy. That's how I ended up in America. So every day after school, I would go straight to the pool for diving practice. So I effectively ate like a second lunch or like a first dinner. I would eat, you know, huge sandwiches, like bowls of pasta. My mom always had something like prepared in the car. So it wasn't a snack, it was a full-on meal. And then a few hours later after practice, I would have another one.
All right. Aditi, what about you? I'm very curious.
Mine was cup of noodles.
Nice.
Really?
Every day, yeah. It was great. It was great.
That sounds lovely. I mentioned mine, the PB&J, but other than that, this is pretty gross. We used to have those sleeves of pepperoni, like just like plain pepperoni slices. I don't know why, but we would eat those all the time, with or without the Ritz cracker. Might just crush into those, but yeah, fun fact. Cool. Anna, anything that we didn't talk about that you just need to get out to the world of people watching our LinkedIn live stream?
No, yeah, this was super fun. Thank you so much for having me. And like, as I mentioned, I'm always I always love to meet and hear from anybody and everybody. So definitely feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or on our Instagram, Chia Smash. But yeah, this was really fun. Thanks so much.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And I hope everybody has a good Friday night or weekend or whenever you're watching this. And we'll see you guys again soon.
Great.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.